What I'd like to present to you today is a program we have here at the Texas A&M Forest Service dealing with urban trees. It's actually the second oldest improvement program we have in our agency. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about our history, share with you some of the work we're doing currently, and Carol will expound on that with the work she's doing in New Mexico, and then talk a little bit about hopefully future plans. Oops. It's all about the trees. We know the value of trees, especially in the urban environment, between mitigating stormwater runoff, air pollution. They also have huge health benefits to us folks that get to spend time with trees in the urban environment. From the shade they cast on a hot summer day to the stress relief they give as you listen to the wind blow through the leaves. But they are in peril. Continued encroachment with concrete is creating huge heat islands, putting our trees in the urban environment under stress. And that's only on top of what we already know our forests, both urban and rural, are facing in the light of climate change. Also, for folks like Carol and myself, as much as we know we're dealing with a changing climate looking backward, we know for a lot of instances, looking forward, our futures are not necessarily very rosy. So here in Texas and in New Mexico, you see the predictions through June of this year for temperature and precipitation. And not surprisingly, here in Texas, it looks like our forecast is a high probability of above average temperatures going into the early spring. Fortunately for us, the rainfall seems to be expected to be about normal, with the exception of the western part of the state. So when you're dealing with climate adaptability in the urban forest, a lot of what we know from historical information on the data, on the climate data looking backwards, is we also have to think about looking forward. And so having a plan in place is very critical in dealing with that. One of the potential, we know that increasing seedling planting is one remedy to potentially offset the impact we're seeing through climate change. My concern, however, is not necessarily, yes, we need more seedlings, but where are we going to get the seed, particularly for species that we use in our urban environments? The American Forest has a publication out identifying a couple of regions they're working in, how they're dealing with the seed shortage. But again, the question is all about time. Realistically, to be dealing with the issues we're facing now, we should have already had plans made many, many years ago. Fortunately, here in Texas, we have an urban tree improvement program. We're now in our 50th year. And the objective of that plan was to develop a dependable seed supply of well-adapted, fast-growing native tree species for urban areas. And if you'll note, the key words here are dependable seed supply. It's all about having enough seed to make sure that we can meet our urban forestry needs in changing environments. The Urban Tree Improvement Program is a collaborative effort. We managed to work together with 12 large municipalities across the state and 8 large growers. They all have vested interest in developing climate adapted seedlings for sale for the growers and for their municipalities for their parks and cityscapes. I call it a tree improvement program. And so a lot of you may not be familiar with tree improvement it is as a science. And basically it's a continual improvement program designed to meet a need or a challenge. And so basically here in the urban environment, we want to develop a climate adapted trees. So we identify the species we want to work with, we make those selections, and we have to test them. But more than that, we also have to make sure we secure those and make them available later on through the creation of seed orchards. So there's the work side, under the breedings here on the left hand of the screen, there's a lot of work that goes into this, the breeding, the testing, the information gathering. But the benefit to everybody that participates in a tree improvement program, be it a commercial or urban program such as this is the creation of a sustainable seed supply through the establishment of seed orchards. And I'll go through each of these steps independently here. Let's start with selection. Together, the municipalities and the growers developed a list of the species they wanted to work with in priority. So when the program first got started in the early 70s, they agreed that they wanted to work with shoe-marred oak, live oak, and sweet gum. So those were the first three species brought into the program. Selections were made, testing was done. As those species were well into the program, in the early 80s, the second list of species was developed. Those included bald cypress, bur oak, caddo maple, and southern magnolia. Those were then put into the tree improvement pipeline and selections, testing, and seed orchards established. In the late 80s, we added American sycamore, big tooth maple, cedar elm, chinkapin oak, and slash pine. Oops. And then so the selections basically are trees that you think might meet the needs that you're looking to solve. And so it could be simple as this live oak here on the left-hand side of the screen that sits out in front of on the front lawn of the county courthouse. Or it might be this magnificent bald cypress that lives on the Riverwalk in downtown San Antonio. Both of these trees are then brought into the program and put through the process. To secure this, once you've made these selections, you have to create seed orchards. And this is usually done through grafting. So this material is captured through the rest of the process. You have access to it. And so we have 3 seed orchard sites here in Texas for all of the species that made it through the process. And some of these orchards are now 40 years old, which is some of them are just now starting to reach prime production. And this is very exciting for us to be able to get this material into the urban landscape. The most crucial part of this, besides the securing of this material, is the testing. The testing needs to meet the needs of the individual species and the individual programs that it's working with. And now, in an ideal world, we'd want to be able to test those very specific individual selections. Unfortunately, a lot of the species we work with, you can't create vegetative propagules, so you have to use the next best thing, and that's seed. So that's why it's referred to as progeny testing. We're using the progeny of our selections to infer back to what we think would be the performance of those individual parents that we brought into the program. So here is a schematic what looks like for testing in live oak, Quercus virginiana, in Texas. There's 2 sets of triangles here that I want to explain. The red triangles denote where the selections came from that are being tested in this particular test series. Now note, we have selections we're bringing into Texas from out of state. There's some gorgeous live oaks in southern Louisiana, southern Mississippi that we thought worthy of testing for parts of Texas. To confirm that, you then do wide scope testing. You can test, very locally if you choose, but in this case for live oak, we've tested, through the DFW region, up here into the northern part of the state, down around the Houston's area, and then of course San Antonio and a little bit southern. So we're getting a wide variety of data. We're testing these selections across several different plant hardiness zones. And that's important to know that information as you move this material, particularly south to north or east to west, as you're changing different climate patterns. And this may have repercussions for use outside of Texas, for example, and Carol will talk more about that in her presentation. In all, for the 8 species that wound up being tested by the group, we brought in 1,384 selections. Of those, only about 1/4 made it into the final round of selection. That is, they were found worthy enough to be included in our program. So in all, we now have 304 selections across those 8 species that we will begin working with. Here's a picture of the live oak test at the end of their 5th year measurement. Once 5 years is all it takes to gather the information we need for the program, these trees are then dug up. The commercial growers will sell them. and the municipalities will plant them out into parks and their cityscapes. And so there's real benefit to having this stuff readily available for use in their programs. For us, within as managers of the program, it gives us the quantitative data we need to be able to tell the tale about how much better our selections are than run-of-the-mill trees from each of these different species. So we can talk numbers in terms of percentages improvement in survival and growth for each of these species. So we have our data, we have our seed orchards. Now our goal is to get this seed into the landscape. And first, our first goal is to, of course, do that here within the state of Texas. So we're developing a marketing plan called Texas Tested, Texas Tough. We're partnering with commercial, small commercial operations, providing them access to our seed, getting feedback from them on how the seedlings do, and then providing some tags that will highlight this information that's coming from our program and getting that on into the landscape. But that's just one piece of the puzzle. We really want to be able to do this on a larger scale. So in 2020, oops, sorry about that. In 2020, we applied for and received a grant from the USDA Forest Service to enhance our urban tree improvement program. This was a 3-year grant started in 2020 with 3 objectives. The goal was not only to work within our seed orchards, we had some work to do in those. As I said, many of them are now 40 years old. We need to get those regrafted. We need to clean up, make sure all of the poor performers are removed from those orchards. We also want to expand the species list that we're working with. As you may have noted, some of the species, most of the species currently in the program are Central Texas and East. They're very applicable in that range. We want to find species that we can work from Central Texas and West. And so we're going to expand the program by adding new species. We also want to be able to make what we have available more regionally available. So we've reached out and have gotten 6 partners, 6 different state organizations to partner with us and develop a program and a seed exchange, if you will, and a testing program uniquely designed for their individual operations. So they may not necessarily want our seed, but they want at least a framework of how to develop a program within their organization. So our program guidance document was one of the first things we created and shared among all of our partners. Now in our 3rd year, a lot of folks are going into testing, as Carol will tell you in her presentation. And so we're going to start collecting a lot of data, and this data will be very important for the expansion of the program across all of the different partners. So that's going to be a key thing, and developing the right information to collect and make sure we get that as soon as possible is a critical component of this program. So our grant partners range everywhere, as far west as Arizona, as far north as Nebraska, and they each have different needs, and that's kind of the value of a tree improvement program. Is we're able to fill different niches specific to the issues that need to be addressed by each of the partners. For example, Arizona is more interested in those species that we've added to the program for our central and western regions, such as desert willow, Texas mountain laurel. We've also done a seed exchange looking for Arizona ash on their behalf. Arkansas is fully committed to establishing their own seed orchards. So we are exchanging scion material for bur, chinkapin, and shoemart oaks, as well as bald cypress and cedar elm. Kansas, again, one of our more northern participants, is doing a hybrid program. They're taking our tested cedar elm as well as the new selections we're making in desert willow and Mexican white oak. Nebraska, the farthest northern partner, is a little bit hesitant to use any of our stuff except for the cedar elm. That's something they're willing to work with and are doing that. New Mexico, as you'll hear from Carol, is again using a hybrid approach, working with some of our tested species such as cedar elm, shoemart oak, and then also working on some of the newer species that we brought into the program. And then Oklahoma is also working with a couple of species that are well tested within their program. And we're also receiving seed from them from some stuff that we're interested in teaching. So each of the partners has a opportunity to work within a unique set of species that's available, we can make available to them. The partners are very excited about this opportunity. The grant is closing this year. I'm excited, Carol will, detail to you what the work is they're doing in New Mexico as an expansion of this program. But there's talk about hopefully procuring an additional grant to carry this work forward. The tests are just now going into the ground, so we're, the critical data that we need to collect is just now happening. So we're excited for the opportunity to potentially procure another grant to carry this work forward. And then potentially one of the things that I'm most interested in is working with each of the partners to expand the testing program to eventually wind up being used as future seed orchards for their programs as they get the information. And of course, as Phil was saying, this model doesn't necessarily have to be within a state, within an organization. It actually could go all the way down to something as simple as your municipality. So I'm reaching out to several major urban areas in the state of Texas to look at the opportunities to create some testing programs with them so that they can ultimately develop seed orchards. My contact information, if you want to find more information about our Texas Tested Texas Stuff program, are here at the bottom of the slide. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Carol to let her talk to you about what they're doing in New Mexico as a part of the expansion of our program.